I just appreciate everybody watching.
Watch him throw the ball, we gon' pick it off. You gon' let him hit the hole or you gon' cut it off. You gon' play through fourth and long or you gon' punt it off. Your defenders, heavy hitters, put your pads in. Don't be looking for the ref to throw no flags in. Keep the helmet on, keep the cleats tight. You the type to want to win by any means, right? You should look alive. This is Trap or Die.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to another episode of the Trap or Die podcast, provided to you by 214 Media and the Hogs Haven podcast. I'm still getting used to not saying that anymore, but the Hogs Haven SB Nation site. I am your host, Mual, Hen Dog Mual, Coach Mual, all that good stuff, man. And here with the guest host, Doug, man. Big Doug is checking in for the episode. Dre and AJ are on the way. We got a guest coming in about 2 seconds. But Doug, how you feeling, man? Is everything good with you?
I'm doing good, man. The intro went crazy, and this backdrop you got here is fire.
Hey, well, look, gotta work on the improvement from time to time. I feel like the intro music was a good addition to the thing. So I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, I was not ready for that.
Hey, man, look, man, we here with it. Let's go ahead and get the guest man in there right now. The big dog, Pete Hailey of NBC Sports Washington, Dakota. I told you to leave me alone. Pete, as you all know, covers the Washington Commanders for NBC Sports Washington. Part of the Washington Football Talk podcast. Keeps you plugged in damn near every single episode. So make sure you tap into that. Pete, how you feeling today, man? You good?
I'm definitely good, Maul. Good to see you, Big Doug. This is our second podcast hangout in like a week. We're just developing such chemistry.
Right.
It's great to see you again too, and I'm excited to hang out with you all for the next half hour or so.
Absolutely. So I got a question for you though. I'm about to bring in AJ in a second, but I saw your tweet. Now weekends is kind of weird because I don't be on Twitter that much on the weekends. I be chilling, but I did see a post and you said something about like a bar tab. And the first thought that I had for you was I wonder if you were drinking because of the fact that the Commanders still haven't settled their quarterback situation. Like, did the bar tab rise because you were stressed out about your job in the next coming months and weeks and things like that? Was that something that was going on in your head right there?
No, I was drinking because I like to drink almost every weekend. And if you ask a doctor, I'm probably considered like an alcoholic based on just scientific reasoning. So the Commanders' quarterback situation didn't have anything to do with it. However, I had that bar tab kind of the same night that the ownership stuff seemed like it might be happening, like in the next minute or 5 minutes. And I was definitely getting stressed, like definitely had a few too many drinks. I'm not prepared to be discussing the pros and cons of Josh Harris and Mitchell Rales taking over. So I'm glad I was able to pay that tab, go to sleep, and have no news to worry about that night or the morning. So we survived the weekend.
So let me ask you a question. And I think I'm gonna start doing this when we continue to get like reporters on. Like, so if somebody was to ask you, just generally speaking, like what is like your job description? Like I can imagine like JP, because he's kind of like a senior in a sense, because I think he's been around like 2010 or 2011 or something like that. His details is probably more extensive, but like on a day-to-day, when you're gathering information, when you're talking to certain people, like what exactly is your job description of the beat reporter? Like how do you get your job done as effective as possible? What does that look like?
Yeah, I'd say when people ask what I do, you can say beat reporter, but I prefer to kind of say, any way you consume Commanders content today, that's where you'll find me, where you'll find us. So we have TV shows, we have the website, we have podcasts. We try to be everywhere that people are. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, just connecting to fans and people who care about the team on all those channels. And yeah, each day it's kind of differs, but with the way the NFL is now, it feels like 10 and a half out of the 12 months of the year, you have something to do. You're preparing for the draft, preparing for free agency. You're looking.
There's no way you sleep, bro.
Yeah,
there's no way.
There is the month of June and the early half of July is when you can cram in your vacations. That's when you can turn your phone off. That's when you can hang out. But for the other 10 and a half months, anytime your phone buzzes, it's like, oh, who did they just trade? Who just got in trouble? What quarterback did they just put in the lineup? And it's stressful, but it's also really fun. And I told this to Doug on our show with Carmi last week. The fans care so much and are so desperate for anyone to provide any sort of insider opinion. It makes our job more fun. If we were covering some crappy team that had a tiny fan base, then it'd be like, wow, no one's even listening to us. But you guys and hundreds of thousands of others are just hanging on to everything this squad does, even though they've been pretty bad for a handful of years. It really energizes me and gets me through those weekends where I'm like, God damn it, I would really like to just not have to worry about this right now.
AJ, how you feeling, big dog? Everything good with you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. It just seems like all of my Apple products are failing me at this very moment, whether it be phone, AirPods, laptop.
I told you about the AirPods, bro. You better get them Beats by Dre, bro.
Yeah, it must be a new product on the way. That's why I'm getting these faulty devices at this moment.
Is there a fine for AJ showing up late to the meeting, Mual? Does he have to run laps after practice or pay a fine? I think there might need to be one.
Well, I would love to throw people under the bus, but I am not going to do that. I have a
good teammate.
I exemplify leadership. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to do that to my boy.
Okay, I clearly don't. I'm just looking to
if there was a fine, I would not pay it. Trust me.
I was gonna say you can go towards my guest appearance.
All right, so we set the line. All right, bet. I see what type of time AJ on. I respect it. Okay, let's get into it though. Pete, there's been, I guess we're in the second week of free agency, officially the second week of free agency. They had a little tampering period for about 2 days, a 2-day window. But obviously before free agency even started, we understood that Payne got his extension with the Commanders as well. So taking everything into account with the Payne re-signing, but obviously what they've done to this point, they're even looking at today as we're recording / streaming, Anthony Walker, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, currently a free agent, did a visit with the Commanders today as of now. I just got in from the gym, so I don't even know if he signed or not. I'm assuming he didn't because it would have been news. But he visited. What's everything in your head about the Commanders all season to this point? How are you feeling about these guys?
I believe they've gotten marginally better, and that's probably frustrating for some to hear because I think I've said that the past couple off seasons, and they've gotten marginally better, but it hasn't really resulted in them winning 1 or 2 or 3 more games than they have the year before or 2 years before. They've been stuck in the 7, 8, 9. I shouldn't even give Ron Rivera 9 yet. It's been 7, 7, 8 so far in the win column. But I like that they went out and addressed the offensive line right away. They didn't screw around and pretend like it was okay. They signed 2 guys right away. They got a definite starter and a hopeful starter in Wiley and Gates. Linebacker, it's a bit of an even split right now, but if they bring in Walker, that's 2 new linebackers, and you're losing Cole Holcomb, so that's some fresh blood there. And Jacoby Brissett raises the floor of the quarterback position. I don't know if he's going to make them any better, and I hope that Sam Howell starts every game this year because that would mean that the future looks brighter, but at least Brissett gives you a fallback option. So I wouldn't give him an A because they haven't had the wow signing or wow acquisition, and that counts trades. A lot of teams are making trades, and that's something the Commanders haven't really dipped their toe in. See the Cowboys, the Giants in the division making trades for offensive playmakers. The Commanders haven't done that or really explored that, I don't think. They tried to do it with Stafford a couple years ago, but that didn't work out. So, but I put them in the B minus range. They are slightly better. They're slightly deeper, but the draft is where they're going to have to really impress me to make me feel great about the offseason.
Let me ask you guys this, especially with the first week of the offseason and the free agency period already taking place. Do you feel like every offseason we just go through a period with Ron and company where they're just adding Jags, just another guy essentially, and just like trying to create like a committee, whether it be on the offensive side of the ball or defensively? I mean, even look at today, the fact that they're now talking or having Anthony Walker visit is like, what are you doing at the linebacker position? Is this just about to be another open competition? Like, how do you guys feel about that? I guess, Doug, if you want to go ahead and kick that off.
Well, I wonder if it isn't more of I think the roster is close enough to where they want, like what guys were out there that they missed out on. Like it doesn't feel like that Stafford year where Ron tried to swing, like Ron tries to swing big once at least every year, it feels like at free agent, and then kind of fill in the gaps. I don't know who was out there in free agency other than like Orlando Brown Jr., a guy like that, which I don't think they were going to be in on. Like, where were you upgrading in free agency that they didn't?
I
They could
mean,
have gotten
like
better
look at the deals that have happened with the linebackers, whether it be like the Levante Davids that returned back at Tampa, or the Shazier that went to Tennessee, or Devin Bush. Like it just, and even the offensive line, like Pete. I mean, you covered the team, beat reporter. Is Andrew Wiley even like guaranteed lock? Of course, we look at the salary and say, hey, he has to play. But is he guaranteed lock at right tackle? Like I watched the interview that he did with you guys and the rest of the media representatives, and he kind of essentially was just saying, hey, whatever they need me to do. Like, what the hell does that mean? What do you mean? Like, where are you playing?
I would calm you down about linebacker. Them spending so much money at linebacker would be a little foolish because they don't play 3 at a time. Sometimes they don't play 2 at a time. They drafted Jamin Davis in the first round a couple years ago, so they spent capital via the draft at that position. And you're hoping that because Payne and Allen are there in the middle for 15, 16, 17 games, and you have Sweat and Young, that you don't need your linebackers to be the Levante David level. You can have them be pretty good, but because they're playing behind such a dominant D line, they're going to have more chances to look really good. So linebacker, I wouldn't get too twisted up about. Offensive line, I get your point. Like, maybe you would have liked them to have gotten Brown instead of Wiley. Did they get the wrong Chiefs tackle? I think Wiley is a little bit better than league average, but maybe from their side, they're looking at it. Not only did they get Wiley, but now they can slide Cosme into guard. So in that way, you're addressing 2 starting spots by signing 1 player. I don't think Wiley is a world beater by any means, but I think he's I almost said a Wiley veteran, which would have been so cheesy. I think he's a smart veteran who can get in the way of guys at right tackle. He may not be pancaking them, but he can be smart with his techniques. And then Cosme can be a little more athletic, a little more of a presence at guard. So look, I think for agency more and more these days, it's about what kind of players do you find in those 1 to 2 year deals who outperform versus what kind of guys do you get at 3 or 4 year deals for tens of millions of dollars who need to be perfect or else that contract looks foolish. Like with William Jackson, they signed and paid him all that money and it didn't work out, and that set him back a little bit. But in 2020, they got McKissick and Logan Thomas on cheap deals and they became core pieces. So that's where I'm thinking. Maybe I'm being a little optimistic. You certainly have a right to be upset with them, AJ, but I think they're hoping that Cody Barton can be a little better behind Payne and Allen. They're hoping Gates, when healthy, can be a starting center and that they get more bang for their buck.
I've always said, because I see your, like, to what you're saying, Pete. I've always said that I see their angle. Like, I think the question is like whether or not it's going to work out, because this is the angle that you chose to. This is what you want to do. Okay, I see what you're trying to do. You want to bank on these low end signings because you see what they can possibly do in your scheme if they flourish, but understand that they haven't reached that potential yet at their prior destination. So what exactly are you going to get when they come here? Are you going to get the same production that they had at the other team, or are they actually going to elevate their production when they join? And that's like one angle. And then AJ's angle is like, why even wade through that when you can just go after these and be more aggressive for these other guys? And personally speaking, I've always, like, especially this year, like I guess it feels weird, but I don't have a side. Like, I don't have that anymore because of exactly what's going on with the organization as a whole. Like, why invest so much time into a guy? I don't even know if he's going to be here, whether he goes to the playoffs or not. I don't know if he's going to be here. Like, why invest my time, like me thinking, into Ron Rivera and what decisions he's making when he may not even be here regardless of what he does, what he does. And that may not be fair for, like, just the people who concern themselves about the team, which is understandable. But at the same vein, like, these are some guys who understand where they are from a macro standpoint, but also know, like, these are what you said, Pete. These are people who understand, like, they're competing every single year. Like, why make drastic changes when things are just around in their perspective, things are just around the corner from being consistently good? That's kind of how I'm viewing things, but it's a weird dynamic for me this year. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, I don't want to give the team a pass. Like AJ can be pissed off with the lack of aggression, and they have only found marginal players. And why, like you said, Maul, like okay, if you're finding marginal players, you need to be confident that you can raise their play. But this coaching staff seems to sometimes take forever to put guys in the right spots, and maybe harm the development of certain players. So all the skepticism is warranted. I think the issue, and you touched on them all there, is that this year is just so difficult. It feels like it's just going to be its own year in the history of the organization. Like it just feels like it's going to exist on its own because of ownership. And I don't know if they have, I mean, they got Payne at that big contract, right? But I don't know if they had the full budget to go out and go crazy in free agency. And because of Ron's tenuous standing as a head coach, like it's just so much uncertainty that why would you commit all this long-term resources when the principal head coach, maybe the GM, maybe the president, maybe everything resets in a year. So it sucks for fans who are desperate for this thing to go in the right direction. But this might just have to be a year where it's like a movie series, and this is the one movie that like doesn't really make any sense, and then you just kind of forget about it and move on, and then the next movie comes out and you're like, okay, this is more what I was hoping to see.
But I want to add to Pete's point about the whole movie thing. Like, that's actually a great analysis, because I was going to say he kind of builds it at a turtle-like pace. And that this season is like watching your favorite TV show or something that you're going to have to wait 2 years for them to come out with a new episode. So that's kind of like the mode I am as a fan right now. And it almost feels like Ron has been building the roster that way this year in the offseason. Like, they're not making any drastic moves. There's no sense of desperation. There's no sense of urgency. Like last year, like the big conversation was, oh, we get the quarterback, we move on to the next level. You know, this team's ready to take the step. Like Ron, for some reason, he thinks this roster is really good. I mean, it is a decent roster, but they are missing the quarterback. But this year, there's no sense of urgency from Ron or anyone when you hear them talk. There's no sense of desperation, not even at the quarterback position. It's like, we're just going to slowly and keep methodically building this team. And I've always said from the beginning, the best thing Ron probably will do in his tenure in Washington is set it up better for the next person that comes after him. And that's what it's looking like, because the next person probably, if Sam Howell doesn't work out, the next person that comes in here is probably only going to need to get that quarterback, you know? And I mean, because the roster isn't bad. It isn't what he took over with in 2019 or 2020 when he came in. So he's, like I said, he's methodically building, but I love the movie role that this doesn't make sense maybe, but it's probably like The Wire 2, The Wire season 2. Like, people didn't like The Wire season 2 because it didn't make sense. It didn't, kind of follow up the first season, but then it all tied in when you look at it back, from a whole.
But Dre, when you say that, I guess my issue, I didn't really have an issue with them free agency wise. I already knew what to expect under Ron Rivera and what he's done in Carolina. I think more so for me is because of this certain talent that you have on your team and certain guys that are up for contracts, and the fact that you just paid Deron Payne. Another failed season, especially not acquiring the proper quarterback, or this whatever project with Sam Howell doesn't work, you're losing this team even further. Like, you're gonna get guys super frustrated on this team overall and start asking for trades and want to move on to other destinations. And you're still in the same position of, what do we do at quarterback? Are we drafting a guy, or are we back to possibly this Lamar Jackson talk again? Maybe it's just, I don't know. That's the part that I look at.
Dre, you probably were right about the coach, at least as far as getting them to where they needed to go before the next guy steps in. Because remember when Rivera got here, I mean, it was a mess, and it got even messier, nothing that he could have ever imagined. AJ, to your point, what Ron probably will be remembered for is not being able to hit the quarterback. I mean, imagine how different this team, how different the organization is if they had pulled off the Stafford trade 2 years ago. Right, like and that's why they keep. I mean, that's what were they going to do other than Howell this year? I mean, they didn't have very many options.
Yeah, and I guess I'm glad, Dre, that you liked my movie analogy. I appreciate it. I guess the one issue with it is that when you make a movie like that, all right, the characters don't age. You make the Wire season, and then you can film Wire season 3, and the characters are like 2 weeks older. But in real life, in the NFL, Terry McLaurin's a year older. Jahan Dotson gets another season of wear and tear. So you can't just freeze these guys' career. And that goes to AJ's talking about how you maybe frustrate players. You get them wanting to look elsewhere. So it is dangerous to look at it as all right, I'm just preparing this team. I want to make sure we don't bottom out, and maybe I'll get it in a spot where it's good for the next head coach. It's nice and presentable, but it doesn't always work that way, especially in the NFL when week to week guys are just fighting for every part of their job, every part of their contract, all that good stuff.
Let me ask you this question, Pete, and Doug as well. Are y'all under like, and I want to emphasize the fact that we say this often, like in terms of like a fan's perspective or just general following of football, like we automatically say yes to this question because it's the right thing to say technically. But the question is like, are you all like a real believer of draft a quarterback no matter what up until the point that you find your answer? And the reason why I ask it, and I prefaced it saying things the way I said, like sometimes it's not easy to get. I can imagine. I know I'm not in the NFL, but sometimes it's just not easy. Like rolling up at pick 16 or pick 10, whatever number you are, and you're content with what you have, like because of who you had the year before or who you currently have on your roster right now, who you acquired in free agency maybe, and you see another player that's a game changer at another position, and you say, I would rather go for this person as opposed to going and reaching for a quarterback when we can kind of put the person that we currently have as a placeholder. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But if it does work out to its best, we're playoff contention, and we're probably talking about at least a title game, like in terms of like their vision. Like, are you on that boat of, yes, I don't care where they're at. Like we have Jacoby Brissett, we have Sam Howell this year, but if we see something that we like in that first round, or maybe even that second round, one of our top 2 picks, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this quarterback at this position. Like, where are y'all at with the overall theory behind always taking that quarterback no matter what?
Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I mean, I guess if you like them, I'd do it, but I don't think I'd be taking quarterback just for the sake of taking quarterback. Like, personally, I don't like any of the quarterbacks after the first 2 probably this year, which you'd have to be up in the first 2 spots to get. I've always said, I mean, I would have preferred that they'd have traded up for Justin Fields a couple of years ago. And to me, that's how you reset this. I know Ron was trying to pull like, I guess, the Brady type situation where you build the roster up, then insert quarterback. I think it's tougher to do it that way. And then outside of that, I mean, some people talk about, shooting your shot every year. Outside of the first 2 rounds, I mean, I'm not into it just because of the hit rate is so low. Hit rate so low in the first round. You start getting out of the second round, it's just incredibly ridiculous.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule anything out. If somehow someone falls to them at 16, then they should evaluate it. I don't think that'll happen. But also, I wouldn't hate it if somehow a guy falls, they don't love him, they just want to try Howell, who's already been with the team for a year. Like, to me, Howell, he's not a rookie by technicality, but he's basically your rookie quarterback this year. And he's a 5th rounder, and he's a little short, but there are tools to build around. He's got a great arm. He can move around. He's tough. He's durable. He's got a really nice business-like approach. Like, I saw him in the locker room a ton this year. He was always on his iPad. Like, doesn't seem like to be a guy who jokes around. Like, he takes this very seriously. So go and find that tight end at 16 that Eric Bieniemy really wants and who can elevate this offense, or go get a 3rd corner that makes your defense better and can pick off passes so Howell is set up. You're right, Doug. I don't like trying to build everything and then dropping in a quarterback, because I think when you have the quarterback, he has an impact on everything else. But as we saw at the Niners, they're when you have a team that is flawless or has so many offensive weapons, they can carry a quarterback along with them and lessen that responsibility. So this year, and again, it goes into Rivera, like, I don't want this coaching staff, whether Bieniemy fails or he succeeds and goes elsewhere, I don't know if he's going to be around for more than 1 year. And I don't want Rivera and Bieniemy to get their hands on a quarterback that takes all this draft capital, and then boom, they're out the door and this quarterback has his head spinning because he's now working with the second head coach. So that's a long way of saying I would be fine with them going a different position, 1st, 2nd, 3rd round when they really need to build out the roster. And then you can maybe throw a dart in the 4th or 5th round, a guy like DTR from UCLA or something to try and have another arm. But for the most part, I think with Brissett and Howell, you have a guy who can be your long-term and a guy who can get you through 2023. And for me, that's good enough right now.
So I guess just to piggyback off of Mual's question that he posed to you guys, by any chance did you guys get to see Josina Anderson's tweet earlier today in regards to Commanders and, you know, possibly exploring the new ownership group, exploring that QB option immediately? For me, she's one of the better insiders in the NFL that actually has a rapport with players. How I took it was she's probably had a conversation with Lamar and his mom about what team would you be interested in outside of Baltimore. And there's a reason why she posted that tweet. Do you give that any credence? I mean, I haven't been following too crazy with this ownership stuff because, I mean, for me, it's like when it happens. But as you know, Pete, Doug, and all of us here, the fan base was going crazy over the weekend as if like something was literally announced, all type of individuals making all type of posts. Like it was
I hope y'all
insane.
been blocking them. Because I'm not.
Oh yeah,
I'm not,
I've been.
A lot of people with lots of sources
right,
this weekend.
I can't stand that, bro. I can't.
I got accounts blocked.
Those
I got
$9 a month Twitter subscribers.
I got Sam Howell muted. I got Taylor Heineke muted. I got all type of things muted. But like, do you give it any credence? Because I feel like she didn't say that blindly. She knows something.
She can also do that to help stir up his pot a little bit more, right?
That's what I said.
Yeah,
I mean, but there's no.
would I
what
take Lamar
incentive
Jackson? Would I
what
trade for Lamar
incentive is
Jackson? I
there for
would.
her though? But Doug, what
Because
incentive
she's
is there for
to
her? It's
keep
not
up
like she's
that-
gonna get
A lot of
2%.
incentive.
She's not gonna get 2%.
You're talking about.
No, I think she's like, okay, I'll do you a favor, Lamar, and then when
That's
you
right.
make a decision on your contract, you're going to text me. That's usually how that works. I think there's incentive.
Yeah.
If a new owner were to come in next week, then yeah, I think that owner would be justified in looking at Lamar Jackson. I think an under talked about part of this is would the Ravens want to trade Lamar to their neighbors when the Ravens have slowly been taking over the Commanders area and fans have been bailing, not in huge numbers, but are looking down the road. Oh, that's an awesome quarterback, a stable as hell organization. They win all the time. There's no owner in congressional hearings. Like, I'm going to go root for them. I don't think it would make sense for the Ravens to be like, here, Commanders, here's our main player, a guy who can elevate everything you do and make you more relevant. Take him and we'll take 2 first-rounders. I don't think it's worth it. And that's the Ravens might look at it only from a football perspective, but from a business perspective, you're giving the rival team down the street from you a main reason for people to buy in. I just don't think it'd be wise from Baltimore in that perspective to give the Commanders that guy. So the Commanders can want Lamar all they want, but the Ravens have to be willing to give it to him.
So
And
how would
AJ? I've been saying
ahead.
the same thing. Like, I don't think Baltimore would trade him to DC because, for one thing, Baltimore doesn't like us very much. Like DC, I'm a little bit biased, but I feel like we don't think about Baltimore much. But they do not like us. I mean, they showed us that with the baseball team. Peter Angelos did not want DC getting the baseball team. That's why we are in this horrible TV contract right now, and I can't watch the Nationals because I have YouTube TV. So, I mean, if Baltimore trading Lamar Jackson to the Commanders, Harbaugh always talks about, oh, we're taking the fan base from the Commanders, we're taking them from the Redskins, whatever. But they do not want to give us any reason to wake up a sleeping giant, because they know if they wake up a sleeping giant, the Commanders takes over everything in this area. They're back to whatever they were.
Totally agree.
So I guess I'll fit in one question right quick. And if you all have any last questions for Pete, we can go ahead and get that out the way. But do we think how do I want to phrase this? Because I don't want to give people like AJ, because there's a lot of people who think like AJ Hope. But do we think that Washington?
There's nothing wrong with thinking like AJ. If you think like
it's
AJ,
nothing wrong.
You are on the right path to success, young man and young lady.
Yes,
continue
correct.
to be you.
There's nothing
yes,
wrong with thinking like AJ, but I want everybody to understand that if I ask this question, I don't want people. All right, what's the % chance that new ownership entertains a new quarterback in 2023 named Lamar Jackson? Is this something that we can really like put some credence into? Because I understand where AJ's coming from with his respect for Josina Anderson. But I guess I'll leave it that much because I know, like what Dre said as well, it could be some alternative or ulterior motives for pushing a tweet out there like that as well. So what's the percent chance? Is it below 50? Where we at?
Yeah, I'd say it's well below 50. This is a complete guess, but 10 to 15%. That owner will want to really make his or her or their names and their presence is felt, and there'd be no better way to do that than acquiring Lamar Jackson. So I'm sure they would look at that. I think it'd be stupid not to, but maybe Ron and the Martys and all those guys would be able to kind of push back, say, hey, Lamar's great, but instead of giving up first round picks and tens of millions of dollars, let's see what Sam Howell can do. He's not going to be Lamar Jackson, but at $800,000 a year salary and a contract that runs a couple more seasons, he could be something for us. So let's take a chill pill. Welcome. Here's the building. Why don't you go fix the pipes that are bursting? Why don't you get our players some better food? Skip the whole Lamar Jackson thing, and we'll circle back in 12 months from now.
If we're talking about the,
go ahead, Dre. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, if we're talking about the percentage that it happens, like it's extremely low. The percentage that a new owner may be interested, I mean, slap Lamar Jackson jerseys up for sale and see what happens in the Commanders, all new white uniforms. And that's why, an owner would say, yes, please, here's 4 years, $200 million. The problem is, all the assets. I don't think it would happen. Would I entertain it as an owner? I mean, who's more marketable in the league than Lamar Jackson? There are very few players.
And I was just going to say, if whoever the owner is, if he comes in right out the gates and say, we're getting Lamar Jackson right now, I'm going to be honest with you, I'll be a little off put. I'll feel like, we got Dan Jr. back. Dan Snyder Jr. is back. I mean, because I felt like that's what he did when he took over the franchise in 1999. He was like, hey, we're just coming out. We're getting all name guys. I'm not listening to anyone that's already in place and staff here. We're getting who I want to get. And I feel like for a new owner to come in and say that without having, hired a GM or even, maybe had, multiple conversations with those in place, I feel like he just comes right in. He's stepping over toes. And, like I said, we're back in 1999 again. I mean, at least that's the perception I would get if that was the case, and he comes right out the gate doing that.
In fairness, there's a difference between 26-year-old Lamar Jackson and 41-year-old Bruce Smith, but I do hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and also, Dre, it goes back to new ownership. Like, you have no ties, no emotion towards Ron Rivera, Marty Herney, Martin Mayhew, and you already, in your mind, you got fixated that these guys are out anyway. So you probably already been talking to potential GM candidates that you plan on, acquiring maybe after this draft or later throughout the season. So are you going to sit back and listen to what Ron Rivera tells you about acquiring an elite quarterback at the age of 26 that's been a league MVP? And also you could take them from that market that's down the street and improve your local market revenue wise, because you now have all the financials and you can see that this market has been hit because they don't have a marquee player to market. Like, fan base loves Terry McLaurin, they were behind Chase Young rookie year, but they really don't have a person to market that can cross lines to encourage younger fans to come in, especially with the name change. Like, they don't have that guy. So
they got the mascot, bro.
Major Tutty, disrespect.
Major Tutty, bro.
But I mean, are you going to sit back as an owner and say, I got to take credence to what Ron Rivera tells me when I know that this fool is gone at the end of the year?
AJ, I got to ask you this: if this Josh Harris, let's just hypothetically say it's Josh Harris. Josh Harris hasn't owned an NFL team. He hasn't, been a general manager for an NFL team. So, for me to kind of just go with anything Josh Harris says about an NFL team when he walks through the door, I'm like, I'm going to be a little hesitant because I haven't seen Josh Harris build an NFL team. So I don't know if I'm just going to go ahead and just take his word that, he comes in, what he says is power, So that's why I would just be a little bit off. But, and as far as Baltimore, my question, my response to you bringing up Lamar and Baltimore hasn't offered him a contract, or they haven't brought him back, and that's the question I would be asking. I understand Lamar's 26 and everything, but you got to ask, why is the Ravens not breaking their back to sign this guy or bring him back right now?
Well, and how much could they have to get, my bad, Mual, how much could they possibly already have together infrastructure wise? I think something that I probably don't pay enough attention to is the Sean Payton comments like potential owner groups had talked to him. So, I mean, if you extrapolate that out, if they did it with Sean Payton, there's no reason to think that
all these things
ownership
are lined
groups
up.
don't have-
They
could already have a GM ready and waiting, and they could have had, you know, discussions with him and maybe Joe Cena about things like that. It's not impossible, particularly
But
in
in
the
April,
aftermath of those.
I
Sean
wouldn't
Payton
want a new
stuff.
GM coming in April. Like I want him in place in
Well,
February.
I mean, all these guys are still. I mean, all these guys are lifers and grinders that get these VP of, you know, these football ops jobs. So it's not like they don't know who's in the draft. You know what I mean? Like, I understand this is the kind of time of year when all the work's been put in. But these guys, like, say Louis Riddick, say they had talked to Louis Riddick about being the GM. I mean, Louis is still studying these guys. So they could come in that close to the draft, I think, and get it done, although that's usually not what happens. I think when Ron got here, even he kept Kyle Smith, right? So,
yeah, but
they could
Kyle
have it
Smith
ready.
Hold on, let's
Kyle
pause
Smith
for a
got fired
second.
like right after the draft, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Oh, I don't remember. I forgot. Maybe Pete knows, but I want to make sure I get Pete out of here, man, because I know he said he told me he had a little bit of he was on time, so I want to make sure that I get the floor to you, Pete. Anything?
Man, I heard
Pete.
I heard Pete say he was staying with us for the whole show. I swear. I heard
yeah, so I said that
you
because
talking about a
planned,
fine. We about to find you,
first
Pete.
off, hey, but listen though, I want to give you the floor, man. Plug anything and everything that you got going on. And again, I appreciate you for joining us, big dog. We'll have you back again, of course, down the line.
Yep. AJ's last one in. I'm first one out. We're like the exact opposite of what you need in a quarterback. We're just setting really bad examples here. Yeah, find me on Twitter at Pete Hailey, NBCS. And stay tuned to the Washington Football Talk podcast. I'm dying to record a Dan Snyder has sold the Commanders. I almost said sold, which is not the word.
Hey, but before you get out of here, Pete, what is your plans that day? Like if it happens,
I need to know the first drink too. Like what bottle are you opening up?
Bar? Are you going to a bar? Like what are your plans? Because I mean, I'm not that invested in who the ownership group is, but I'm hearing about parades. I'm seeing permit licensing and all this stuff. Like for you in particular, what are your plans the day that breaks? Like, let's say
he probably planning the party. What a
let's
party!
Say we get off of this at 9 p.m. tonight. Breaking news that I don't know, Jeff Bezos and Michael Jordan are buying the Commanders. What are the first things you're gonna do in the next 30 minutes after that breaks?
I'll probably have a panic attack because it's going to be the biggest day of my professional career. And then I'll work a bunch of hours. And then at the end, I'll have a nice glass of bourbon and reflect on the 2+ decades of Dan Snyder's disastrous ownership. But I got to roll, boys. This has been really, really fun. Mual, thank you for the invite. Thanks for all the questions and stuff, guys. And I appreciate the show. Sorry, I got to dip early. Next time I'll do a full hour. You have my word, but this has been fun. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Take care. All right, Pete.
We got you. We'll send you the invoice for that fine.
Well, let's ask Dre something right quick because I'm not going to tell you what AJ answered, how he responded, but we're gonna see what type of time Dre on, man. So Dre, you were a little bit, you know what I'm saying, you were a little bit late too, and Pete offered like, what are the fines for people who are late, man? If we sent you a fine for the Trap or Die podcast, man, are you paying that fine or you passing?
Hey, if it's $10, I can pay it. You know what I'm saying? Go in the petty money fund.
Hey, they said he ain't paying shit, bro.
Hey, you better be. I'm gonna be like, fuck your fine.
That's crazy, bro. We ain't do nothing to him, man. Okay, so where are we at? I think so. The Lamar Jackson thing is one situation. I think quarterback overall. I guess Doug, let's start with you. Since we've last talked, fellas, AJ, Dre. I mean, now we know Jacoby Brissett is here, and we touched on him briefly just from the quarterback position altogether. But do we think that Jacoby is going to be the starter in week 1, or is this like how do you kind of envision this quarterback situation playing out? I don't think that Sam Howell, as we know right now, is drastically better than anybody. As far as we know, it's the actual opposite, and that Jacoby is drastically better than Sam Howell until we know a little bit something more about Sam. And with that in my head, it screams that there's a huge challenge ahead of Sam Howell, unless he just is lights out better. But there's a huge challenge ahead of Sam Howell, and he's going to have to showcase coaches and his teammates that he is the right person for the job. And Jacoby in his intro presser said that, you know, he's here for competition. Competition doesn't scare him. Like, it is the nature of his job. So if he loses it, it's whatever. It's fine. It's perfectly fine with us. But I don't think that Jacoby's coming into this mindset is like, I'm about to be this number 2 guy. Like, he's ready to take Sam Howell's job, and he's ready to show Sam Howell, hey, player, it's how you get it done. But where are y'all at? Like, how do you think this? How do you all envision this quarterback competition playing out?
But the easiest way for Ron to keep his job and EB is to get Howell to work, right? I mean, that's, to me, that's it. You want to keep your job? Show me that Sam Howell works so that we can keep rolling on the rookie contract. I guess, in fairness to Bieniemy, the same thing can be said for Brissett, who has looked good in places. I guess if you can get either one to work, I get it. But certainly, if you can get Howell to work, I would think the new ownership team would look highly on that.
So I think if you have a real quarterback competition, this is just my opinion, but I feel like if you ask me today in March, that Jacoby Brissett will win the competition. I think he will just win it outright. But Doug has an excellent point in that in order for Ron and EB to kind of work, they have to kind of make Sam Howell work. But I also get the notion that EB isn't the type of guy that's going to just roll with Sam Howell because Sam Howell, they have to make Sam Howell work. I feel like EB is the type of person that's going to be like, man, whoever wins this battle, whoever's going to make us look the best, that's who I want to start. And I say that because the last couple of years, you know, Washington fans have kind of, you know, teased the quarterback competition process. I mean, last year it was, well, Carson Wentz was their guy last year. It was no kind of, you know, debate about that. But the year before that, it was Ryan Fitzpatrick. And Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heineke was lauded as this quarterback competition. But I think everyone knew that it wasn't a real competition, that it was going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick's job. They were going to give him the job, and he had it outright. And I think the year before it was the same with Dwayne Haskins, and I think it was Kyle Allen, or Kyle Allen at the time was backing him up. They said it was a quarterback competition, and he said Dwayne Haskins won. And that didn't feel like a real competition. But this year, it may feel like a bit of the same to some fans because, you know, you're going into it, you're saying, hey, Sam Howell's going to compete with Jacoby Brissett. But like I said, the difference is you have Eric Bieniemy here. And Eric Bieniemy doesn't strike me as a guy that's just going to roll with someone just because of optics, so to speak, or perception, so to speak. So I think that Sam Howell's really going to have to come in prepared. And I hope Pete is right in that he is the guy that takes this serious, because Jacoby Brissett, he's a veteran. He knows this league. And at this point, I kind of liken him to a Geno Smith. You know, Geno Smith went through all the battles, you know, and everything. He was the backup quarterback at a lot of places. People were signing him without the intention of starting him. But then he went into Seattle and he found himself in a position to kind of, you know, change the perception of him. And he went out and worked and got him a damn contract this year. I'm not saying that Jacoby Brissett do that, but I kind of feel like he's in that same mode as a Geno Smith, a guy that's kind of forgotten about, a guy that you only think of as a backup quarterback in the NFL. And then they just come out and they just steady and they show you something. And that's what he kind of did at Cleveland last year. I mean, I felt like, you know, last year that Cleveland was he had a pretty damn good year, you know, given the circumstances starting for Cleveland last year. I mean, it was better than I thought he would play. I mean, I'm not saying he could be a top half of the league starter or anything, but again, he could be like a Geno Smith where he could change the perception around him, and he's going to come prepared. So if Sam Howell wants this job, I think he's really going to have to play his ass off in the summer. And it's not just because Jacoby Brissett is going to come prepared, but I really don't think this time around they're going to give the job away to a guy.
Yeah, I mean, and as you know, that's been my concern with whoever they were going to bring in as a veteran quarterback to, I guess, quote unquote, compete, back up, whatever the case. Man, guys like Jacoby Brissett, Baker Mayfield, or Jimmy Garoppolo, whoever you wanted to, that were guys that had experience playing in these games, they're going to be head and shoulders above Sam Howell because, one, he's not familiar with even running a West Coast system, and there's some things in his game that I just hate. I hate the double padding of the ball. I hate the lack of going through progressions and how, like, Mac Brown and their staff kind of told him to run the ball so quickly if he didn't see certain things. I'm just concerned that he's not going to be able to meet up to the to the spotlight of what has been put on him. Like, he has so much weight on him from the fan base and just himself. I feel like he's a guy that is locked in and serious about his craft. But at the end of the day, you still got to go on that field and produce and show that you can actually, you know, regurgitate what you're getting in the film room on the field. And I just don't see that. And like you, Dre, I think that Jacoby Brissett is going to be the starter week 1.
In fairness, AJ, to the kid, they asked him to run like that the last year because all the weapons were gone, and they had nothing. Because if you look at the year before, when you had the 2 running backs and the 2 wide receivers that ended up in the league, I think he ran for like 150 yards compared to the 900 that he got the next year. So I don't know that's. I think the opposite. Instead of knocking a guy for that, I think you should applaud a guy when the coach had said, "Hey, we're going to need you to run it, 15 times more this year." And he said, "You know what? No problem. I got that." And he did. So, I mean, that's on the coaching staff, not on him. He didn't decide to just run for 900 yards. I'm sure he didn't want to. He didn't the year before.
Yeah, I know he didn't decide, but I think the fact that they put that in his head, it stopped him from really going through progressions on the field. And he just immediately, if he didn't see what he was supposed to on the first read, he was out of there. Which, yeah, it sucks that the coaches asked him to do that, but also in the back of his mind, and now really only playing 1 game in a year plus, is like you're gonna revert back to that mindset of, damn, if I don't see the first look, I'm out of there. I'm running.
He didn't in that Cowboys game though.
But and I was going to say, too, with Sam Howell, a lot of people looked at his rushing numbers in UNC and it's assumed he was like this athletic scrambling type of quarterback. And that's furthest from the truth. Like, Sam Howell is not really that athletic. I don't even think he has Taylor Heineke's athleticism. But like to Doug's point, he ran because the coaching staff wanted him to do that year at UNC. And I do commend him for that because he showed something. I mean, but in college, as we see, it can be a little easier to kind of generate those running yards from the quarterback position. I sat there and watched Tim Tebow, just dominate college football for 3 years as a fullback masquerading as a quarterback. And he didn't have that, quick twitch or that big time athletic ability, in my opinion, but it looked good at the college level, but at the pro level, it didn't translate. So that's kind of one of the things I worried about with Sam Howell, and that, his escapability and his, that athleticism that people kind of perceived that he had would transfer to the next level. But I did see some things in the Cowboys game that kind of, show some flashes. I mean, he showed an ability, a gamer-like ability, kind of in a Taylor Heineke mode. I actually had a conversation with one of my good friends today, and he said that he likes Sam Howell and he thinks that Sam Howell is like a better version of Taylor Heineke. And I said, if you get a better version of Taylor Heineke, that's a pretty damn good quarterback, because I felt like all Taylor Heineke is damn missing is a little bit better decision making and the arm talent, to kind of take him to that next level. So, I mean, if you're getting that from Sam, that's fine. But again, I mean, I think he really has to come into training camp because he has to impress Eric Bieniemy, a guy who didn't have him last year, a guy who had no ties to him last year. And he has to beat out a very prepared veteran behind him.
I'm sure Ron also asked Bieniemy during the interview process, like, how do you feel about Howell, right? And do you think you can make it work here? Because if you do, obviously that's good for everybody. So I don't think, I'm sure Bieniemy's watched and has some kind of idea whether he likes him or not, or else they'd have probably tried to do something more at quarterback, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting overall, man. Like in my head, when I think about the quarterback situation altogether, you always hear like this area, this city knows nothing outside of 2 quarterbacks with your team. Like it's always 2. It's not just one. The only time that in my lifetime, right? Because I know about Joe Theismann. I think even still him, I think he had competition out there, or it was another name that he was with as well. But only time that you ever was unified on a quarterback was 1 year. And it was 2012. Like, that's the only time this area was unified on one quarterback. Outside of that, you're always talking about multiple quarterbacks here. And I think that with Washington this year, it's not going to change. I don't think that people, and I don't want to speak like about everybody in absolute. So I'm saying, like, generally speaking, in this area, like, there's not a lot of patience for the quarterback position. Like, if things don't look good in one game, and it's the initial impression, like, all of a sudden, like, it's terrible, as opposed to just having a bad game, and not being able to learn from that bad game. If somebody looks really good, it's, oh, this is a Hall of Fame quarterback. We may end up going to the Super Bowl with this guy. I think the medium is going to be important with this year, but I don't even know. Again, as we continue, I don't know, like, who ends up winning out. I can see Jacoby for the reasons that we talked about. I can see Jacoby winning out and really putting a damper in the expectations of the fan base. But what does that look like? How does that reaction look like? And I'm speaking from like an outside perspective. Like, inside, they're probably cool with it, but that doesn't mean that the outside pressure doesn't influence the decision making from the coaches. Ron Rivera has been influenced plenty of times. And I don't know where like the true matter. We have speculation. I don't know where the true matter of putting Carson Wentz in that Cleveland game. I don't know where that true decision came from. Like, hit from a mental standpoint. I don't know where the decision of Sam Howell even going from playing half the game to the full game. Like, obviously Taylor played an influence, but it wasn't just Taylor. Like, that was probably the person who talked to him. It had to be more people, or had to be more influences. Like, I just don't know what this is going to look like when Jacoby and Sam officially take off. Like, does people start hating Jacoby because he's better than Sam, or does Sam just not look good? And Ron still goes with him because he knows that he has to play the rookie or play the second year player from an optic standpoint. I don't know, bro. And that's kind of where my mind thinks about when I think about this competition this year.
Well, and if Howell wins the job, let's say, and they start off poorly, 1-4, let's say 1-3, somewhere where you're like really feeling like you've got to make a move at quarterback, what exactly does that do? And this is what I've always said, like, I kind of hate the way that this is set up with Ron being both. Like, what good does it do the franchise to put in Brissett if you're already at, like, say 1-4? Where does he get you to? I mean, if you're struggling to climb back to 500, then you're drafting in the middle again. It's where this team has been stuck forever at 500. I just think if Sam Howell can at all get out there, take the job, which I think he will, I think you just got to ride with him the year, and whatever happens, happens. And if it's terrible, then you put yourself in position for one of the better quarterback classes we've had in a long time.
I tell you, Ron gonna be riding his ass back to Charlotte.
I'll say the only thing I gotta say about that. Only thing I gotta say about that, Doug, is, like, I understand the angle, but the more I hear it, I do align with the side. Like, Ron is trying to win. Like, he has to win. And while it's okay in theory for us, the team, the people who follow the team, who are cool with the team losing, I would be perfectly fine with Sam Howell starting. And if you end up losing games with Sam, cool. Like, get your two wins or 3 wins out of the season, 4 wins out of the season, get a top 5 draft pick. But Ron is going to look at that and be like, oh my God, I'm 1-4. Oh my God, this new owner looking at me, bro. He asks me every day, bro, when you gonna make that quarterback change? Oh my God. He's asking me, what do you think about Cancun this time of the year? Like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm gonna make it till November. I'm gonna go ahead and make this move right now because I need to make sure that my ass is safe too. So, like, well,
that's why it's tough to do both, right? Because say you were the brand new GM, that you would just assume roll with the young guy, and if things don't work well, then you've positioned yourself for the future. That's why I never liked the idea of the head of football ops and the head coach being the same guy, because they have 2 exactly opposite jobs. Like, one guy is supposed to be protecting the franchise for the future, and the other guy is supposed to be winning right now. That's why it's so tough to do that.
Yeah. So for me, like, this whole thing, I don't care if Sam Howell goes out, he goes 1-4. And I'm actually with you, Doug. Like, if Sam Howell does go 1-4, my personal opinion would be let him go ahead and finish out the season. But any result this year honestly just doesn't matter to me, because I feel like Ron is a dead man walking in a sense. I mean, that's just the sentiment. Unless he has some kind of a really, really good season that makes new ownership just not even, question should you bring this guy back. I mean, my expectations right now are around what he's pretty much done since his tenure has been here, which is 7-8 wins. That's my expectations. Obviously, as a fan, I hope they do more. I would love to see them do more. I want to root for them. I want to see them win. But if my expectations come true, Ron is out of the door, and everyone else is out of the door after that. So that's why it's like, I don't even care if Ron has this big decision to make if Sam Howell goes 1-4 and he decides to go to Jacoby Brissett. Because at that point, it's like, hey, we already know that this is over after this. If that's the case, if this is where they are at that point in the season, we know for a fact that this owner is dying to get this guy out of here. But like I said, I'm going to root for a good outcome because I'm a Washington Commanders fan through and through, and I want to see these guys win, But at the same time, this year is just so much like going to a casino or even shit. We just got betting legal in Maryland and, last November, December. Every betting website gave us free money. That's what this feels like right now. It just feels like you're playing with house money at this point as a Washington Commanders fan because you're just like, hey, and like as Pete said, this might be like a sequel in a movie right now that makes no sense. It's just a filler year or a filler episode in a great TV show. That may be what the season is. But at the end of the day, I'm just so hopeful because Dan Snyder's not going to be a part of any of this anymore. So anything that happens now, and I'm like, hey, it's all good, So I feel
might as well.
I just feel like 2023 is kind of a insignificant year in the overall scheme of things as far as roster building goes. But I do feel like they have a good enough roster, and that's what makes the situation so hopeful as well. I feel like they have a good enough roster that when the new ownership decides to make a decision, that they can go out and they're not going to have some kind of really bad season. They can just go aggressively, get a guy at quarterback, and then you're in the ball game.
Hey, bro, let's get the day he sailed, man. Y'all ask Pete. I say we go to the house, bro. You know what I'm saying? I say we go get a section at the house. You know what I'm saying? Turn up on Georgia Ave. You know what I'm saying? Get drunk with why AJ don't like AJ don't like that idea, bro. You ain't trying to go to the house, bro?
Now AJ is Dan Snyder fan.
Not at all.
Dan Snyder. I mean, AJ made some enemies this week. AJ made some enemies on Twitter this week, man.
I
seen them
AJ in the spaces. Oh man, they're mad at AJ's lack of enthusiasm in the spaces.
This must have been about Sam Howell then. It had to be about
Dan
Sam
Snyder. Like AJ made a tweet that he got some.
Nah, they want me to go crazy about Daniel Snyder for some reason. Like, man, I like the fact that he spent money.
See, that's how I expected because AJ's only thinking about football. Like it's really
right,
football
that's
with
it.
AJ. So it is what it is.
But even for football, Dan Snyder ain't been shit.
Yeah, he's been an idiot all steps of the way. Okay, fellas, Doug, I'll give you the plug right quick. Anything and everything that you got going on. Appreciate you joining us for the show, the entire show as well. Chopping up with Pete Hailey and obviously the Trapper Dive crew, man. What you got going on?
No, I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, it's at Doug McCray NFL is the Twitter account, and the Big Douglas Show, anywhere you get your podcast. We do Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So check that out.
Yes, sir. Everybody in the chat. I know I didn't say nothing earlier, but I see you as always. Hawk, I see you. Appreciate you checking in out too. I see you. Peace Craft, Monty, the fellas, man. Appreciate y'all checking in. Make sure y'all hit that like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. AJ, Dre, we back next week, man. I'm working on the guests. We'll keep that posted. Fingers crossed. Keep working on it, but yeah, y'all take it easy.
We gonna have Jeff Bezos on here next week.
He's at the Lido's, right? They said he's at the
Lido's Pizza. We're gonna shoot the show from Lido's Pizza.
Man, I heard Josh Harris was at Maggiano's.
Hey, you know what I'm saying? Make something shake.
The waiter from the Maggiano's had the scoop.
Oh man! All right, we out of here, bro. Y'all take it easy. Peace.